live in the LinkedIn space. We're also live on Facebook. So plenty of places to catch it if you want to catch it. But my name is Alessandra Nicholson. I'm a sterile processing manager, or almost former sterile processing manager. I have been working in the sterile processing field for 15 years. And I just wanted to take some time to answer some of the questions that I've been getting in my inbox from folks on TikTok that don't know anything about SPD, don't know anything about some of the topics that have been raised up on my page. So I'll start with the basic and just say how to wit. This video was for her. But she sent me a message and she said that she's learning a lot. She just got a job offer to be a sterile processing technician. She knows that it's a really important job, but she had questions about it because she's never worked in there before. I came from the same background. I never knew about sterile processing in the hospital before I started working there. I just simply was applying to all the entry-level positions, and I got hired for that one. And I was lucky because they were doing on-the-job training. So that's still something that can happen, but you can also go to school to be a sterile processing tech. There are both in-person and online classes that teach sterile processing basic concepts. And you can get a certification through one of two bodies. There's HSPA and then there's CBSPD. So you would take an exam with them, and once you became certified or provisionally certified, you would be eligible to work in those positions. But because of the staffing crisis that the industry is facing across the board, we're seeing more and more people that are taking folks that are from on the street that don't know anything about it, and training them to get ready for the job. So there's tons of ways to become a sterile processing tech. So she was saying that she was nervous, and I told her, please don't be. It is a difficult job, but it's not one that you can't learn. So it's something that's really important and very critical to patient success. You know, you can have the best surgeon in the world, but if your surgical instruments are dirty, there's really not a whole lot you can do to mitigate that level of risk, except for counting on this team to get it right the first time, right? So if you're on TikTok, you can search over on YouTube for Sterile MD. You'll find the show The Process, which is one of the channels that these shows will air on, as well as LinkedIn. You can search for The Process. You can also search for Behind the Red Line on LinkedIn, and the same for Facebook. And then lastly, if you're not watching it from TikTok, I'm getting my questions from my TikTok DMs. So you can find me on TikTok at Lady Avon. That's LADYAVN. And send your question to the DM, and I'll be happy to answer it. All right. So one of the first things that she asked was, do you have to be certified? And the answer is, in most places, no. There are about 4 or 5 states that do require that you have a certification prior to working in the field. However, it's not required everywhere. And most places, even if it is required, they may give you a grace period of up to, I've seen it as high as 2 years, but typically 1 year before you would need to take that test and become certified after working there. So it's a mix. More and more departments are requiring it in their job descriptions. So you have to be careful about that and check that out for yourself. All right. That being said, to get a certification, I can't really speak to the CBSPD process because I'm not CBSPD certified, but I can speak to the HSPA process because I do hold a certified registered central service technician certificate, or otherwise known as a CRCST. It is hosted by HSPA. You do have to pay to take the test, and I believe right now the exam fee is $150, and then you can sit the exam. They do have a textbook. Let me grab it for you guys so you can see it, because they do have a textbook you can buy to get ready for the exam. And it's currently on its 9th edition. This one, I believe, is the 8th edition. Yeah, this one's the 8th edition. So this is the 8th edition book. It covers things like anatomy and physiology, medical terminology, but it also gives you all of the basics of sterilization, decontamination, storage, sterile storage, what type of agencies we have rules from, like the Department of Transportation, OSHA, FDA, the CDC. So it gives you a basic understanding of what that is. So this one's 8th edition, the 9th edition. Oh, thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. Harry Mullen, he said that the exam fee is currently $140. So $140, and you can sit the exam. One important thing about the exam is you don't have to go to a class in order to sit this exam. So I'm kind of on the fence about that, but that's the current status is you don't have to. I recommend that you do go to some type of school or take some type of online course or at least buy the book and read it yourself, so that you do have a basic understanding of the sterile processing concepts before you walk into the building. I think it just helps you as an individual learn faster on the job about what is available to you. So this book right now you can use to take the test if you have it up until June 2024. But at that point, you would have to buy the 9th edition, which is the only edition available for purchase at this time. So if you go to hspa. I think it's .com, it might be .org, but you can search for it. And if you want to buy a book, you would be buying the 9th edition right now. So I would highly encourage you to either, like I said, seek out a school or do self-study prior to working in SPD, but I'm living proof that you don't have to do it that way. You really can train on the job. I worked in the field for about 5 years before I took the certification test, and I just simply bought the books, me and some of my coworkers, and we did a study group, and that's how we got ready to take the exam. But it was a lot easier for us to digest that information because we have been working in the field for so long. But one of the great things about it and why I do advocate for it is because otherwise, you're only able to vet the information that somebody else told you. And sometimes humans make mistakes. So they may tell you a practice that's not good. Like, for instance, when I started as a tech, we were cleaning some of our surgical instruments, our anesthesia equipment with Ivory dish soap. And because I hadn't taken the test, I hadn't read the book, I did not know that was not clinically indicated. So it's helpful for you to get that background by taking the exam. Again, I'm over on TikTok at Lady Avn, AVN, taking your questions in the DM. All right. So the next question she had was about the career ladder. She wanted to know how you move up in sterile processing. So there's multiple levels. There's, of course, the entry-level technician. You will see it on Indeed or places like LinkedIn in multiple ways. It might be sterile processing technician, central service technician. I've seen it in different manners. And now you also see things like endotechs, scope techs showing up in those job descriptions. So if you want to turn on your Indeed notifications for those, you can put in those multiple positions. Now, within the sterile processing technician level, different hospitals have multiple levels. So you may work at a place that is only just everybody's sterile processing technician. But some places have Tech 2, Tech 3, Tech 4. It just depends on the facility. Essentially, the difference between them typically is a sterile processing technician is that entry-level tech. You may have up to a year of experience. You may be certified or you may not. You may be being trained on the job to get ready to perform the basic functions of decontamination, sterilization, assembly and instrument inspection, sterile storage, and sterile transport. Then when you get into level 2, and mind you, these are different for every facility, so it is not hardwired anywhere. But most of the time I see level 2 is somebody that has somewhere in the 2 to 3 range years of experience, and they're definitely certified with the basic CBSPD or CRCST. And in my experience, it doesn't matter which one you have, you just typically need to have one or the other. Level 3s, we start getting into what we call lead techs. These are people that are essentially shift leads. They're responsible for helping to direct the workflow, prioritizing some of the things that may come onto the floor, doing communication between the department and the OR team, but they're not necessarily in a level of management yet. And then after that, Tech 4s that I've seen in my mind are essentially almost like supervisors. But again, each hospital is going to be a little bit different. So then after that, you get into leadership positions. So we have things like the supervisors, above supervisors, we have managers. You can move into director positions. And typically to get into these positions such as supervisor, really it's going to be years of service that they're looking at on your application. not necessarily previous leadership roles. Like they might want to see that you were a lead tech, but they don't necessarily need to see that you were previously a supervisor. Once you get into management level, there may be a bachelor's degree required, but still in this market, you can still find a lot of sterile processing manager positions that are exclusive to CRCST. They might also require you to have an additional certification, such as a certified healthcare leader, which SBA offers, and I do believe CBSPD has a management level certification as well. So you can become a manager with those two certifications alone, and then of course your years of experience. If you have a bachelor's degree, you're in an even better position, and we do have tons of sterile processing professionals that are that have their bachelor's degrees. They have master's degrees, and then I'm talking to them and they don't have their CRCST, and I'm like, come on, you're leaving money on the table. As long as you have your CRCST to go with that, you're now qualified for those leadership positions. And then lastly, another position we see in leadership is director. So this person would probably be managing multiple sterile processing managers or multiple sites. So this might be where you see hospital systems that have 2, 3, 4 hospitals in the same area. They would have a regional director that would be providing oversight and guidance out to the individual managers at their sites. So that's another position. Typically with that one, they want to see years of service in a leadership capacity. So as a manager, they typically want to see a CHL, but that's not always required, especially because they do often require a bachelor's and sometimes a master's degree. That being said, what do you make at all those levels? Well, first and foremost, she's asking about salary. I told her, really, first and foremost, depends on where you are. Because a technician in California could make $32 an hour. A technician on the East Coast in Boston may make $32 an hour, but up the street in Jersey, they may be making $22. Down in the South, some I've seen are $15. And you also could be in a minimum wage situation. When I started at minimum wage in Illinois, which at the time was $7.25. But I do believe the technicians in that same location now start out at a higher rate. So it does depend. That being said, you can expect to make somewhere in the $15 to $18 range as a technician in some places. And at that point, it's going to go up a few dollars each time you move into a space. Now, leadership is a little bit different. You start to see salaries creeping into the $45,000 to $65,000 a year range with sterile processing supervisors, sterile processing managers. I'd say it can, these are ballpark figures. I would say you can start to see it in the 65 to, I've seen it as high as $130,000 a year. And then with directors, that could be, again, $100,000, $120,000, $130,000, $150,000 a year, depending on your qualifications and your years of experience and what market you're in. So obviously the cities are going to be paying more than the rural areas. But of course, once you get into a leadership role, we're talking about being at the higher rung of those salary expectations. So there is money that can be made. And then lastly, a lot of technicians do that, and travel and leadership do that by going into travel. So the permanent hospitals don't care for travel as much because it means they have to pay at a higher rate. You're getting somebody that's not familiar with your system. You're kind of at the whim because they don't get trained by anybody before they get sent in. But travel is a great way for you to make more money and to maximize your pay. So it was one of the ways that I was able to actually move out of my small town was by becoming a traveler. I started in SPD in Southern Illinois, and I was making $7.25 an hour as a technician. When I became a supervisor, and just through market adjustments, I was making $11 an hour. And when I became certified, I only gained 25 cents as a raise. So I wasn't making a lot of money for where I was at. And we hired a traveler, and that traveler basically put me up on game. And she told me I can make more money doing travel. So instantly, as I became a traveler, I think my rate was about $18 an hour. I did that for about 6 months. And then I took a permanent position where I was at. Once I took that permanent position, because I was coming in as a new supervisor, I can't remember. I have to check, like literally go back and check stubs. But I think I was making about $85,000 a year, where the prior year before I went on the road and was just working as a technician, I was making about 30 grand a year. So it was a major jump. And then we did that same jump again when I became a manager. I think it went from about 85 to just over 100K. And so again, I'm seeing this major jump in salary with again, with the years of experience and being positioned to be promoted because I had already took these exams and certifications myself. So once the jobs became available, I was able to just slide into them. Um, that being said, it really depends on the market and it really depends on what you want to do. If you want to move up, you can. If you don't have to. You can maximize your pay. Another nice thing with travel is you can, depending on the companies, they'll give you stipends for housing. So some of the travelers will kind of like they'll find people to stay with that's cheaper than the housing stipend that they receive. So for instance, when I was in the Bay Area, my company would give me an extra $1,900 on top of my salary to pay for rent rather than them finding me a place to stay. I was able to find a place to rent for $800. So that meant I got to pocket the rest of my travel stipend. So those are ways you can make money. You also have companies that do travel where they pay for your rental car, for your hotel, for your flights back and forth. So you can amass points that you can use as cash for car rentals, for flights, for hotel stays and things of that nature. So there's a lot of ways that you can maximize your income with the sterile processing field. But the last thing I'll say about it is just don't forget how critical it is. Because like I said when I started, you could do the best possible surgery. You could have the most highly trained surgeon. If the instruments are not cleaned and sterilized properly, then that patient is at an increased risk of infection, of death. And that is not something that anybody wants to be a part of. When you're sick, when you have to have surgery, you want to be able to count on the people that's receiving you. So if you want to get into the field, I highly suggest that you first be a person of high integrity, because you will see, just like every job, just like any job anywhere, there are high performers, mid performers, and low performers. There are people that come to work just to catch a check. There are people that are trying really hard. Don't go into it purely to make money, but since she asked that question, is there, how do I make money in this field? I definitely wanted to answer that. So I'm going to get off here. Oh, wait, I see one more question in the DM. Hold on. Somebody was asking about paperwork and legalities and documentation because they do a lot of, she says she does a lot of sterile processing documentation, and she wanted to know about the legalities of that. So we are a hospital service. Our sterilization records are just like medical records. They have to be kept for a certain length of time, depending on the state that you're in. So some states, hospitals have to retain those records for up to 10 years. Just in case there is any issue with those surgical procedures, they're able to pull those records and find out, was there a problem with the machine? Was everything working properly? Were all the sterilization parameters met? You as an individual signing off on those are signing a legal document into the medical record that this is what happened, this is what I saw. So that does exist. That being said, you can search sterile processing in Google. You will find certain hospitals that have been shut down, that didn't pass inspections and things of that nature. And when patients are infected and they have to go back and look at these records, it can lead back to us. It doesn't always, because it's very hard to pinpoint where an infection came from, but it can. So do be mindful. That's why I say just always uphold the highest standard of care, especially if you're a certified individual. I know I don't think there's a process in which you can get your certification revoked. But that being said, that shouldn't be a license for you to not follow the things that that you read in your 8th edition or your 9th edition of the books. So hopefully that answered questions. I will try to come on a little later and answer more of them because there are so many of them coming through and so many comments coming through. So I want to try to address what I can. But I also want to say, I am not a subject matter expert of everything sterile processing, healthcare, surgery, or anything of that nature. So I'm only speaking from the experience that I've had and what I've seen. I can't speak for everything. So I definitely highly encourage you to search for those standards like the AAMI standards, AAMI, AST standards, Joint Commission standards, CDC standards, because all of those entities create rules and regulations and suggestions, recommendations on what they believe is the best possible way for us to complete a process. So they're the best ones for you to look out to see what do other like-minded peers and collegiate advocates agree on is the highest possible standard of care. So I see a comment I think this is coming from LinkedIn, but Harry Mullen said, if you violate HSPA standards, you can get your certification revoked. So I guess there is some type of process in place that if you are a certified registered sterile processing technician and you're not following best practices, there is some type of process to have your certification revoked. I definitely will ask more questions about that and see if I can find more details about that for the next time that I go live. So if you're watching from YouTube, make sure you take the pinky finger and hit that like and subscribe button so that you get notified every time that we go live here on the Process Media. If you're on LinkedIn or Facebook, find me on TikTok at Lady Avon, LADYAVN. And I will see you guys later. Stay safe and keep each other safe.